Hey guys, I've got a cool tool for you. Let's say that you're working on something and you're deving it out and you want to make a backup of it, but you don't want to go through the hassle of doing version numbers and where are you storing them and which one am I using. So here I have this little menu and I've created this function. You select an object in the content browser and hit save asset version. And then I have a backup folder here, get rid of this, in my content. And here we created a folder for it and gave it a version number. And then if we do it again, it'll just keep incrementing it. And let's say that we restore one, and non-destructively you'd want to copy it. If we select that and save asset version, we'll get another one. And this is an easy way to keep track of if you're deving something out that you're not really sure is the way that you want to use it, then you can save a version that's its current snapshot in time, and then you can always jump back to that one and browse each of them that you have. So here I'm going to show you, not step by step how to make it, but I'm going to open it up and just show you what each step of the process is. All right, save blueprint version. Cool. Oh, that was the one that was open. All right, so on the button press, we're going to get all the selected actors. Looping through, for each element, we're going to say set current asset. Whoops, didn't want to do that. And then we're going to save that, only if it's been changed. And then there's a few steps that we're going to go through here. So for each object, we're first going to check to see if we have a versioned asset or not, and get the base asset name. And that's basically, we're going to get the object name, we're going to get the length. Then we're going to take the length -3 and the length -4, because I am doing in these version number 3-digit padding, and you can set that here basically through this. And then there's one other spot afterwards where we create the version number that you can add more or less padding. So we're going to take off the right 3. If those are numeric, and if the one that followed it was a V, just to make sure that it's, for V number, that's how we're going to determine if it was a backup one or not. Then if that's true, we're going to take everything from the 5th slot over to the left, which should be everything from the character before the V to the left, to the start. We're going to store that as the base asset name. And then we're going to take our current asset. Sorry, I guess I skipped a step here. So if those are true, that it is a backup, it did have numbers, and it did have a V previous to that, then we're going to get the base asset name. If it did not, then we do not have to worry about chopping any of this out. This is all pointless if it does not have V number at the end. Oh, I think this left chop, by the way, is for the underscore. That's why. So you're going to get everything from the underscore to the left. But yeah, if it does not have a backup version number, we're just going to get the asset because it should just be named whatever it is that we're working on, and we're going to store that as the asset name instead. So I sort of screwed up in the middle of that explanation, but hopefully this step makes sense. The next thing that we're going to do is create the assets directory if it doesn't already exist. So we're going to get the base asset name. We're going to go to /game/ and then this is my backup folder. I choose BCK. You can name it whatever you want. This here is where you would create the directory where you are storing your backups. Just put it there. You're going to add the asset name and then / at the end, and then that's our generated directory. So we set that value afterwards. If the directory does not exist, so we check to see if it exists, the return value, if it exists, will come back true. If it does not come back true, which I'm really only doing this to come out of the true branch here. You could, not do the not here and then come out of false. Whatever way you think is easier to read. So if the directory does exist, we say, hey, does it not exist? If that is true, it does not exist, then we're going to make a directory. And we use our generated directory, which we just created back here, to make that directory. If this comes out the other way, then obviously that directory has already been made, so we can just skip this step. All right, so then the next thing is to check if the created directory contains an asset or a copy of the asset already. So have we already made a backup? So we get this, we list the assets. And then for each asset in there, basically this just returns the A string, I think of the display name, or the object name, sorry. Probably says on here. It does not. All right, interesting. All right, so then for each of those, we just list all of them, and then we have the base. Whoops. We have the base asset name, it without any of the version numbers. So then we just say, do any of the objects that are in here contain this? And I'm just doing that kind of as a safety precaution thing. Sometimes people on teams can be messy and drag things to the wrong folder. So if, in our case, that we had BP thing, if it contains anything with the name BP thing in it, then we know that it's got some kind of backups or something in it. So if that comes back true, then we say we're just going to set a bool here called version exists, and we're going to mark it true. All right, so then next, and I kind of do this might be a little confusing. I just really like having the true out of branches. If the directory does not contain a copy, copy the asset to the created directory. So here, if version exists, if it's true, then this will come back not, which means that we're checking whatever value it's not. Right, so if it does not exist, this will be marked false. Then we say not, which means, yeah, if the directory does not contain a copy, this will be false. So then we get the not value, which is true, which is kind of just translating the bool into if it does not exist. If it does not exist, okay, then we're going to get the current asset, which we stored up here, right at the very beginning, the selected asset. And again, you can not do this if you want. You can just drag it straight in, but then you have to switch this to false. All right, so then we get the current asset, and we get the generated directory. We're going to get the display name of the current asset, and so we have the current directory slash object name dot object name, and then we're going to duplicate loaded asset. So the reason why we have to do object name dot object name is because when you duplicate something, if you want to reference the object in the content browser, Unreal reads it as the directory object name dot object name, not object name dot uasset. So in the case of our BP thing, it would be BP thing dot BP thing. And then that'll be the destination path. The destination path has to include the file that you would have, not just the path. All right, so if it does not exist in this directory, we're going to duplicate that asset there. That's this step so far. We're going to save that out as the duplicated version because now it's been duplicated there, but it likely has the wrong name. It probably does not have version number if it's the first time, or it does have a version number because it's a restored backup. So the first time though, because we know that at the very beginning, if the directory does not contain a copy, if the directory does not contain a copy, it's likely just the name with no version number. So we're just going to append underscore version 001 at the end and then rename the asset. However, if the directory does contain a copy of the object, which here we just say if version exists is true, then we're going to get here we set this the final asset directory. So here we checked if the created directory contains a copy of the object. So we got the generated directory, we listed all of the objects in it. And this is kind of important, this for loop, so I'm just going to sit here for a minute. So we originally, here, we checked to see if the directory contained a copy of the asset already. We're going to loop through. It's going to loop through all of the objects alphanumerically. If we get to the last object, then that should be the one with the highest version number, right? Because if you go alphanumerically, the one that would come last is either the one with the last alphabetically listed character at the end, or I guess at the start, if you list them alphabetically, or version number. So, here, BP thing version 001, 2, 3, it's going to do these alphanumerically. This one would come out last. So then that we're going to store here as the final asset in directory. All right, so then we're calling that here. We're going to get the length of it and subtract 3. Then we're going to right chop. And that's because if it already exists, right, we already have a backup in this directory, it's basically going to be bp thing underscore v and then the numbers, and we just want to get rid of the numbers. So here, again, whatever your padding is for your version numbers is the amount that you would subtract here. So right chop says you're going to start from the right, and you're going to count to the left the amount in count. Once you hit that character, you're going to chop everything to the left of that. So you're going to keep everything to the left of that. So you're going to chop off that number of characters on the right side of the string. All right, so then we're going to take that. So here we have, No, I explained that wrong, didn't I? Returns the string to the right of the specified location. Yeah, okay, my bad. So we take, this here is the number of digits we have for our padding. Returns the string to the right. Right, okay. Counting forward from the left, from the beginning of the word. Right, okay. So we take, man, I'm just like trying to remember all this. I built this like a month ago. We take the final directory, we get the length of it, the length minus 3, because we're going to do everything but the last 3, and then we count forward through the word and then chop off those 3 remaining ones. And that should be the version number. And the reason why we're doing that is because we're going to turn it back to an integer and then increment it. So if it's version 003, then we get 003 here, convert it to an integer, and then can increment it to version 4. If it's 12, it'll go to version 13. And then we're going to convert that back to a string as the new version number. We're going to need to append this back. But just so you know, right here, if you take something that's a string that says 003 and you convert it to an integer, it'll get rid of the zeros at the beginning and convert it simply to 3. If it's 012, it will convert it to 12. So, because of that, the next thing we need to do here, this is also where you would set your padding. We take the new version number, we get the length of this, because if it's 3, it's going to be a length of 1. If it's 12, it's going to be a length of 2. 2. So we just need to know how many digits it is, because then if it is less than 3, or less than your padding number, you're going to append a 0 to the start of the string. And then we just do this again. So we do it once. If it's single digit, right, it'll get a 0. And then it'll go through again, because this will say that it's still less than 3, so let's run it again. If it was 2 digits to begin with, and the first time we append a 0, now it's 3 digits, which is my padding number. The next time it'll say, hey, it's not less than 3, so we're fine, just don't do anything, and then move on. So this here is where you're controlling mainly the number of digits that you're adding. All of the other times that we've referenced the padding number, it's the number of digits we're checking for, and this is the number of digits we're adding. All right, so then next, because the asset we're saving could be a restored backup, we have to move it to a temp folder before we rename it. If here we were to bring BP3 over, or say that we do BP2 and bring it over, right? Here, if I save this, we don't want to bring this over, like duplicate it here to this directory, because then it'll clash with one that we've already had. Even if I bring this one, version 3, over, and I bring it back and then rename it, it'll clash with the one that's already named version 3. So I create, I have /game/ then I have a pipeline folder, and I create a proxy folder there. So /game/ /pipe/ proxy, and then we put object name again, and that's for the current asset. Whoops, here we go. And then we duplicate the asset there, and this is just temporary. We then save that out as the proxy asset because we have to reference that. So then we're going to do what we've done before. We're going to rename the asset to base asset name appending _v, and then appending the new version number, which again we did here when we checked the padding and however much we currently had. Also, just to point out, this was final asset in directory, which, as I said, was up here. When we loop through, we get all the objects in the directory. The last one in the directory should be the highest version number 1, and then we save that, and then we're incrementing that. So if you are restoring a backup, it should go off of the highest version number already in the folder. So if I restore version 2 and save it here, copy it here, if I then save, it should create, let's see, hopefully I can close this. All right, now it makes version 4 because we're not incrementing this value, we're incrementing the last value that's in the folder. So we, for the proxy asset that we put in the proxy folder, we're getting the base name, and the last value that's in the backup folder is what we would have incremented when we got this new version number. So then we rename the asset, and then we have the generated directory, which is where the backups are being stored. So we duplicate this proxy asset again to the backup directory now that it is correctly named. So we do that just generated directory / object name dot object name. Duplicate it there, save it, and then we save the proxy asset. You just want to save it there because if it is not saved, you might have references, and deleting it can be kind of annoying, where Unreal kind of throws a fit and gives you some warnings. So we're just going to save it first, and then we'll delete that asset. And that's it. So it's not terribly complicated. It's just a little bit of string control and some asset management. Kind of got a little bit lost in some of my explanations, but hopefully that makes sense. I'm just going to run through the base steps one more time. We're going to get the selected asset, store it, and then save it, only if it's dirty. Then we're going to check to see if it has a version number. And if it does not, we're going to save that as the base name. If it does, we're going to get rid of the version number and save the remainder as the base name. Create the assets directory if it doesn't exist, and this is based on wherever you want it to be. It just uses the object, the base asset name that we just extracted in the previous step. Then we check if the created directory contains, well, also you're checking to make sure if the directory exists here. So if it already exists, don't do anything. If it does not exist, we need to make it. So then we're going to check if the created directory contains a copy of the asset already, and we're just doing that by looping through the objects and seeing if they contain the base asset name. If the directory does not contain any objects, we need to copy that asset to that directory. If the directory does contain a copy of the object, then we've already made some backups, and we just need to increment our version number, which we got through the last object in that directory. Then we take our new version, or we get our new version number by getting the version number from the last object in that directory, and we increment it, which we kind of extracted. We incremented it here, and then here we just convert it back to however much padding you want. So for me it's 3. And then if it's already a backup, we need to temporarily move it to another folder, rename it, then move it, then get rid of the one that was temporary. All right, guys, I hope this helps.